Hello everyone, myself Dr. Vinayak Gandal from KMC College Khopoli, and today I'm going to talk about preparation of effective research proposal. So dear students, in last lecture we have learned about general guidelines for preparation of project report. Dear students, the preparation of project report is an important task in research. So today we are going to learn how to write research proposal. It is the first step in the research. Research proposal is a concise and coherent summary of your proposed research. Your proposal sets out the central issues or questions that you intend to address. The research proposal also outlines the general areas of study within which your research falls, referring to the current state of knowledge and any recent debates on the topic. So, dear students, drafting of research proposal is an important activity in the field of research. Each learner or researcher need to draft a effective research proposal, or in other words, it is said that research proposal is a brief plan of work. So whatever researcher or learner want to do in his research field, he is always required to prepare outline of research activities that are to be performed in near future. So it is essential for all of us to understand some points for the purpose of drafting effective research proposal. Normally, a good research proposal gives an idea or it helps the learner to undertake his or her research as per the planned activities or planned proposal. Normally, each researcher need to prepare a brief plan about the research activities to be performed in near future is called as a research proposal. So while undertaking any types of research, either minor or major, every learner should prepare a proposed research proposal. Okay. So dear students, writing and research proposal involves many steps, and here we are going to learn about the contents of research proposal, means the contents that are to be considered by the learner while preparing a good research proposal. The first content of research proposal is title of project or title of research proposal. Okay, the learner should keep in mind some guidelines or some points while drafting or while writing title of project. Your title should give a clear indication of your proposed research approach. Okay, the research title should be specific, it should be clear and understandable. So each learner need to write suitable title of the project, and that must be related with the objectives of study. Means learner is required to consider their research objectives while deciding title of the project. So this is the first content and that is must from our point of view. Okay. The secondly, a learner is required to write an introduction about their proposed research. So it is the first step of writing information about proposed research. So research proposal introduction is the beginning of your paper or research project. It should be written in the way so that your readers have a clear understanding of what you want to do in research. The introduction of any research proposal consists of background of the study. It means learner is required to give a specific information about the background of study that have been selected by the researcher as a research project. It must consist of significance of the study. Learner is required to write in introduction how his proposed proposal is more significant. So while drafting an introduction about a research proposal, learner should consider these points and write a effective introduction of research proposal that gives clear idea to the concerned person. Okay, so it is necessary for all of us to write a brief introduction about proposed research proposal. Next content, that is a statement of problem. Dear students, keep it in your mind, without a statement of problem, no anyone can undertake research. So normally it is said that a research activity is begins with research problem. So while drafting research proposal, learner is required to identify the research problem. A statement of the problem is used in research work as a claim that outlines the problem addressed by a study. A good research problem should address an existing gap in knowledge in the field and lead to further research. Each learner should write a specific research problem that will be addressed in the entire research. So while drafting or while writing statement of problem, learner is required to identify the gap that is called as a research gap in the research field. So if learner want to write a research statement of research problem, he is required to take some reviews in the particular area that is selected by the researcher. So in short, statement writing of statement of problem is an important activity of the proposed research proposal. Then each learner is required to write in his research proposal about the need of the study. It means he is required to mention how the present or proposed research is important. Okay, so need of the study or need for the study should be informed by gaps in the existing research, practice and theory. Even while writing need of the study or importance of the study, the learner is required to undertake a review of the existing research. So whatever points or whatever aspects that has been studied by the learner by way of taking reviews, the learner is enabled to find a specific research gap, and that will helps the learner to write importance and need of the study. Research can be justified along with following criteria. So each researcher need to consider these things, that is the gaps in the literature that demanded attention. So it is must for all of us to find or to identify the research gap in the research field by way of taking literature review. It highlights potential contribution of the study in improving practices, justify how the study can improve policy and decision making. So, dear students, keep it in your mind while writing need of the study or importance of the study, you should consider a specific literature review in that study area. Okay. Another content that must be included in a proposed research proposal, that is called as objectives of the study. So normally drafting of objectives of the study is based on whatever research questions learner is having. So while drafting objectives of the study, learner is required to consider few points. That is, the research objectives should be clear to understand. It should be specific. It should cover all research questions. Means whatever questions has been arised in front of a learner or researcher at the time of drafting research proposal, he has to consider all these questions, and all these questions must be covered within the objectives designed by the learner. So, dear students, there are three methods of drafting objectives of the study. So, out of three, first method is that is popularly known as brainstorming your objectives. In the first method, researcher is required to state their main research question to guide their ideas. If you are writing a research proposal, then you have probably developed a research question. So, whatever questions arising in front of you as a researcher or learner, just think about the questions. And the second method, that is using the right language. Start each objective with an action verb. Objectives are about action, so use verbs when you list them. So whatever questions you are having while drafting research proposal, you have to use a right language, and objectives must be written with simple language and understandable language. It should be specific and clear to understand. Third method that is to be considered by the learner while drafting objectives of the study, that is writing the objectives. Normally, it is a common practice to write our research objectives after introduction and problem statements. So, whatever information written in a introduction and problem statement of the proposed research, the learner may have some idea about the objectives and some questions which is arising while thinking on research proposal. If the learner or student or researcher is having some idea about getting answers to the such questions, then he has to write some specific objectives. So, dear students, Generally, drafting of objectives is based on or depends on these three methods, and each learner is required to consider these three methods for preparing effective research proposal. Okay. Next, each learner or each student is required to write or determine some hypothesis for the proposed research proposal. Normally, a hypothesis is a statement that can be tested by scientific research. Or if you want to test a relationship between two or more things, you need to write hypothesis before you start your experiment or data collection. So, whatever learner is going to undertake in his entire research, normally each learner or researcher is required to determine or to fix some predetermined statement about the things or facts. Okay. So generally learner are always required to write null hypothesis. If your research involves statistical hypothesis testing, you will also have to write a null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is the default position that there is no association between two variables, and normally the null hypothesis is written as H0 while the alternative hypothesis is written as H1. For example, here null hypothesis is the number of lectures attended by first year students has no effect on their final exam score. Normally means null hypothesis is a predetermined statement about the fact. Here researcher also is required to write alternate hypothesis is there. If null hypothesis is rejected, then normally alternate hypothesis is accepted. So in the case of alternate hypothesis, in this case the null alternate hypothesis is the number of lectures attended by first year students has a positive effect on their final exam scores. So dear students, keep it in your mind. Hypothesis means the predetermined statement about the fact. So before undertaking a research or before uh, doing an experiment or before collection of data, each learner is required to draft a specific statement about the facts which is learner going to study, and based on the hypothesis or predetermined statement, the learner is required to test these statements by using various statistical tools and techniques. Or the null if the information is relevant to the null hypothesis, so normally null hypothesis in that case is accepted. And if there is no relevant information or if null hypothesis is rejected, then we have to accept alternate hypothesis. So in the case of drafting of hypothesis, we have to consider some things. That is, hypothesis is the statement that explain what you expect to happen. Hypothesis should be clear and understandable. Hypothesis must be testable. It must be measurable, and hypothesis content an independent and dependent variable. Means there must be a independent and dependent variable in each hypothesis. So optimum hypothesis should be selected by the learner while drafting research proposal or while doing research project. Okay. Next content of research proposal is research methodology. Each learner is required to write a description about research methodology in detail. So research methodology is the outline of research project. So whatever researcher want to do in entire research process, normally the researcher is required to write about the detailed plan in under the heading of research methodology. Okay. So normally the research methodology consists of methods of data collection. Each learner is required to write about various methods of data collections or whatever methods of data collection is available to undertake present research project. The researcher is required to write about that methods of data collection, uh, like primary method of data collection or secondary method of data collection. So normally the research is based on either primary methods of data collection or secondary methods of data collection or on both. So depending on the nature of research, a researcher has to select the methods of data collection. Secondly, research methodology consists of sample size. Each learner is required to write or to select appropriate sample size for their proposed research project. There should be a optimum selection of sample size. Normally sample size means the numbers or quantity or units of the respondents from the given population. So while selecting sample size, each researcher or learner is required to consider universe and population of the study, and based on our availability of population and universe, a appropriate sample size should be selected. And sample size, selection of sample size is must for the purpose of data collection. Another content which involves in research methodology, that is profile of study area. Learner should write a brief profile of study area. Study area means the area in which your research project is based. So whatever study area is selected by the learner for doing proposed research project, a short profile must be written. Next content, that is whatever statistical techniques and tools to be used for testing hypotheses or validation of objectives. The learner is required to give a brief description about the statistical techniques. And as you know that there are many statistical tests and techniques available for testing the data or even testing hypothesis, like there is a percentage method, uh, F test, Z test, T test, chi-square test is there, regression analysis is there, ANOVA is there. So depending upon or depending on the uh, type of data collection or type of data that researcher is going to collect, he has to select a suitable statistical tools or techniques for data analysis and testing the hypothesis. And normally in entire research process, researcher is required to validate the objectives that has been written for the present research work, or even there should be a proper validation of objectives and hypotheses. Okay. A research methodology also consists of limitations of the study. Each learner is required the limitations of proposed study. It means whatever proposed limitations the researchers will have in entire research process, he has to write a few description about limitations of the study in his proposed research proposal. Okay. Next content of research proposal is interdisciplinary relevance. A learner is required to write in his proposed research proposal about how proposed research proposal is more relevant. Interdisciplinary studies involves the combination of two or more academic disciplines into one activity, that is a research project. It draws knowledge from several other fields like sociology, anthropology, psychology, economics, etc. It is about creating something by thinking across boundaries. While drafting interdisciplinary relevance, the learner should consider number of things, and he is required to mention how our present or proposed research project is more relevant for many fields or many branches. Okay. So, a brief relevance, interdisciplinary relevance must be written in proposed research proposal. Another, the researcher is also required to take review of research and development in the field. Means each learner is required to undertake a literature review to find out the research gap. So whatever existing studies has been undertaken by other researchers, that must be reviewed. So literature review must be in the core subject of the study area. So each learner is required to read some information, some books about the existing research or existing research activities that has been carried out by others. So normally literature review is the process of taking review of studies already done by others. So it is important to write a brief literature review while preparing research proposal. So conducting and writing literature review is an important task in the research process. While writing literature review, researcher is required to choose a topic, is required to define some research questions, and then find some literature. Researcher should decide on the scope of their review. He is required to consider how many studies researcher need to look at. Okay, so whatever studies has been undertaken in the research field, researcher has to consider about this. Researcher also required to select some database for conducting some searches. Researcher also required to make some list of database or some list of studies or researches that has been undertaken earlier by the other researchers. And in the writing and conducting process of literature review, a researcher has to use or is required to consider the many ways for finding a research gap. So whatever books available, whatever uh, material available online, whatever published data are there, you have to consider these type of data. You have to read this type of data. Those are related with your subject, and then write a brief literature review about the study. Okay. Next, to write final review of literature. In this case, each researcher or learner is required to mention the detailed description about the past research or research activities done by others. Next, content that researcher must be write in his research proposal, that is called plan of work and time schedule. So dear students, it is the plan of action about proposed work. Each learner is required to design a proper plan of action about their proposed work. He has to mm, design specific timelines for completion of proposed research project. There must be a term bound period. There must be a task wise time management. A effective research is always depends on effective time management. So learner is required to use different time management techniques while preparing proposal and while undertaking entire research project. So each research proposal must contain the proper plan of action, that is plan of work and time schedule. So researcher is required to write a specific timelines for drafting for writing research project, collection of data, analysis of data, and finalization of project and submission of projects. So whatever time is required by the learner for completing entire research project, so the plan about that proposed activities must be written under the heading of plan of work and time schedule. Next, content of effective research proposal is references, or it is also known as a bibliography. So dear students, whatever references or whatever existing studies has been considered by the learner while drafting research proposal, that must be listed under the heading of references or bibliography. The definition of bibliography is a list of sources you used when writing a scholarly article or paper, or it is the list of books or list of authors, or whatever article has been published by the authors on specific subjects. And if you referred all these publications or books while drafting your proposal, you have to list out the description about these publications. Okay, normally the bibliography is the list of sources. It included or it include in the research proposal at the end. Even in a final research project, researcher is required to write a detailed bibliography or list of publication that has been used in the research project. So while drafting research proposal, each learner is required to mention the list of books and list of other published data that has been used or that has been read out by the learner while preparing this proposal. So keep it in your mind. Bibliography or references is the last stage of drafting a research proposal, and that must be included in the research proposal. So dear students, these are the few guidelines about preparation of effective research proposal. So in short, it is said that whatever activities you are going to perform as a researcher in near future, you should require to prepare a brief plan about that activities called as a proposed research proposal. So you just consider whatever I have been told you and prepare a effective research proposal. Thank you.